To that is the auditor sends the information to the state, and the state is the one that is controlling that. Here in Lake County, Auditor Galloway sent all of his numbers to the state, and I was asking him, well, what's the average? And we were thinking it was going to be 30%. He said, well, I have to hear back from the state. The state has to actually approve what the individual counties are all about. So I don't think it's necessarily the counties that are driving it. It is the state auditor's office that's driving that.
And I just wonder if that's constitutional.
I don't know that. You'd be better off, I know your background, you'd probably be better off answering that, but I just don't know the answer to that question. We've been here a long time, and I won't take a lot of your time, but what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to tell you the comforting lies. So I'll apologize if I trigger anyone here in advance. I'm just going to tell you some unpleasant truths. I've been looking at property taxes since 2015. I started this when I looked at my own property tax bill. In the 10 years I've been there, the taxes went up 40%. I said to myself, if this continues, it's going to price me out of my home. So what I have done, I've made it a mission to find out and learn about property taxes, contacted the state, developed a phone friendship with the auditor's office there, and they said, Brian, you know, there's an awful lot of people down here that are lobbyists for, there's about 200 lobbyists for different groups. But, you know, the one group that we don't have a lobby for are the citizens. And so when I said that, well, why don't I start a 501c4 lobbyist for citizens? And that's what we have done. And we operate on the biblical principles of, you know, as Leonard said, love thy neighbor, never to bear false witness. So what I can tell you, can we find the video, John? There is Ron Young was a commissioner of Lake County, but was also a state rep. A couple of years ago, he retired as commissioner, and he contacted me and he said, Brian, would you mind recording me? So I take my little camcorders and I go to all the meetings, and I said, sure, Ron. And he says, I've got something that I want to tell the people. And here's what Ron said.
I believe, in a very generalized sense, is the government's top priorities are basically to grow and protect itself. So I saw that in Columbus over and over again. Very vividly. And I learned that the top priority of most politicians is to protect themselves and promote their careers. That's what keeps people moving forward, primary motivation.
Sure. Now, I don't want to disparage any and all of the representatives. I have to give Kelly Dieter, and it's the first time I've met her, but if she's only been 2 months on the job, she's a very bright lady. She understands what is going on, and I was very impressed with that short presentation that you made. However, here's a gentleman that probably had a come to Jesus moment, and he wanted to make sure that everybody knows. So with that mindset, there was not one thought of, I'm going to look out for the best interest of the average citizens. Leonard and I were trying to collect a petition to increase the number of participants in the Budget Commission. The Budget Commission is made up of the prosecutor, the treasurer, and the auditor. Their role should be as the watchdogs for the taxpayers. So when all of these taxing authorities, remember the taxing authorities are the schools, we've got Deepwood, the crime lab, I think we've got like 54 in Lake County taxing authorities. But what happens is that we're nothing more than a rubber stamp. There is no one that is actually looking at the school to say, well, wait a minute, you've got 90, 180 days of cash reserves, your spending is out of control. See, in the Budget Commission, and most of all 88 probably counties operate a little differently, but we don't do anything. So if we're talking about eliminating property tax, we determined that when we looked at the actual local property taxes for schools, it would be, we'd need to replace about $12 billion throughout this state if we said we're not going to fund the schools locally with property tax, and that would probably equate to about an extra 4.5% sales tax. But the more that I think about it, if we said, okay, we got rid of the property tax, and we're now got a sales tax, if we've got no way to control the spending, all that really means is the sales tax are going to go up. Now, in Lake County, again, with my county background, what I do when I ask for public records requests, I ask for 3 to 5 years worth of financial statements, and I do an analysis of the statements. And I said to Deepwood, I said, well, you've got $65 million in cash. So what they did in the next couple of years, they moved the cash around into other accounts. I said to the Lake Metro Parks, I said, you've got $30 million. How much do you need? In this recent revaluation, Metro Parks got $400,000 without a vote of the taxpayers. I went to the director and I said, I'd like you to forego that $400,000. No, Brian, we need that to keep the parks safe and clean. The crime lab in Lake County, they're getting $1.6 million additional a year, more than you need. I went to Colson, the prosecutor, and I said, Chuck, why'd you ask for that much money if you didn't need it? I didn't want to have to go back to the taxpayers for 15 years. He was thinking that's a plus. And I said, no, 5 years tops. Because you've got to justify your existence and that you're being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. That doesn't sound like a foreign concept to me. But as Leonard and Elaine and John are saying, we're out of whack. And the problem is, it's we the people. Leonard and I were collecting signatures to add 2 people, as I said, to the Budget Commission. Here's some of the explanations we got for not signing the petition. You cannot do anything to the schools because we need to do it for the children. That was number 1. Okay? Believe it or not, there are some people that do not correlate when they go to the ballot box and pass a levy that increases their taxes. Hard to believe, but it's true. We talk about an uneducated society. And that killed it for me. It was sort of a head slapper when they were saying, Brian, you've got to pass these levies because you've got to keep your property values up. And I'm saying, we don't have a chance if we've got that kind of mentality. So I'll just end with this. I could keep going on. Oh, no, very important. I forgot this. The mentality of many of the state legislators, senators, and representatives, I'm not saying all, and even county auditors, they're saying, if a senior cannot afford their home because of the property taxes, now is the time for that senior to sell their home and move into an apartment. Mindset. There's a housing, housing shortage. Seniors, help out the state. Sell your home, move into an apartment with rent you can't afford. Ladies and gentlemen, this is very critical. We are in a critical stage. 2 years ago, when we talked to legislators, they promised they were going to do something. Leonard and I have been down there 4 times, talked to the Ways and Means Committee, talked to the council on, they had a committee on tax reform and review. And by the way, when I spoke to that committee, they censored my speech. I was saying to them, what they did is they played classical music over my speech. And I wrote to them and I wrote to my representatives, and they said, "Nah, Brian, we had a glitch. We had a little glitch in the system." And that bothered me. Why did it bother me? Because my elected representatives, they did not say, "Brian, we're going to remedy that. You can come down and talk again, or we're going to read it into the record." So Kelly Dieter she's a gem. If she comes before the townhouse and speaks to the people, that's what they need to do. If they need to do it every month, they should be doing that. We try to get a hold of Dan Troy, we try to get a hold of Jamie Callender and Jerry Serino, our senator. They won't even meet with us. That's a problem. We try to reach out to the Sprague, the Treasurer Sprague, and Yost, the Attorney General. We wanted to talk to them. They don't have time for the peasants. So do you think we're going to be supporting Sprague and Yost? Republicans? We're not Democrats, we're not Republicans, we're populists. We are fighting for you. And that's what we're doing. You and the next couple generations. As Leonard said, without the property ownership, they're going to be just serfs. We're not going to let that happen. And we're going to make sure that our representatives hear us. And I appreciate it very much for your time, and you've been very gracious. Any questions? Yes, sir.
One other aspect of that is PAC funds. To me, PAC funds are really controlled by a large business and a lot of foreign people that contribute to PAC funds. And they control the vote. And I think we need to do a lot about representatives get their money, because I think they abuse it.
I'd like to talk to you more about that, because I need to get educated, on that. The donor class, unfortunately, our representatives, not all, but many of the representatives, they are representing the donor class. As Ron Young said, the top priority of a politician is to protect themselves and get reelected.
And take the money.
We talked to give a kudos to a representative, Brian Stewart. He's a little south of Columbus. He actually met with him in the office. He said, "Brian, because we talked about eliminating the property tax." He said, "Well, if you try to do this, I've only got 2 years. My first year is we're working on the budget, and then the second year I'm working on getting reelected." So, who's looking out for us? Really, who is looking out for us? It's the more that I pull back the curtain, I think this constitutional republic, this constitutional representative democracy is an illusion, ladies and gentlemen. It's an illusion. If they cared about us, they would not have spent 2 years reviewing the property taxes, and the end result was an 836-page report that did nothing. So I say you can sit back and we can say, "Oh boy, this is real," but what they're banking on is 6 months from now, it'll all quiet down. It'll all quiet down. I can show you a 1-minute video. A lady's daughter sent a video that she's counting on her money. And she goes to the treasurer's office in Lake County. And it sort of broke my heart just watching this lady, 88 years old, saying, "I can't afford this anymore." She worked 40, 50 years with her husband. They built the house together. He passed away, and now she's going to lose her home. It's going to happen more. I've been teaching people about
1, 2, 2000, 2,701, 25, 50, 75, 83.
And what is this for?
My real estate taxes.
And how much more do you need that we're gonna go to the bank and get more? How much more?
$1,000.
Here she at the bank, paying 6 months. At the treasurer's office, rather. The point being that this should not happen.
$2,701.83. I'm 88 years old. I lost my husband.
I'm sorry to hear that.
We worked hard our whole entire life to build my house. Went to work sick, worked on the railroad. We finally built our house together. And now I can't afford these taxes.
Yes, sir.
I just have a quick question. Am I to assume that all occupied and unoccupied government buildings are funded by the taxpayers?
I think all government doesn't produce anything.
Right,
They're coming from us.
I just
Yeah.
wanted to verify
Yes.
that.
Yes.
Parklands and buildings as well.
Yes.
First of all, I'd like to thank you gentlemen for the information that you have provided to us today. It's very valuable.
Thank
But
you.
I'd like to suggest there is an affliction that you need to recognize and address in every one of your presentations. If I ask everybody in this room to raise your hand if you've ever been told you don't talk about politics and religion, how many would raise your hand? We have been pre-programmed as children to leave these issues alone. And until and unless we make this a more important issue than a local sports team or whatever, we will continue to suffer. You have got to empower your audiences to let that chain of slavery behind them and start talking about politics and religion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That reminded me of something. I was trying, when I first started, I talked about a housing affordability threshold, how you can determine whether you can afford a tax levy, and that went over people's head. Then I was trying to tell two friends of mine, I've known them for over 30 years. One guy was on his phone, and I was telling him about inside, outside millage, House Bill 920. You know what he said to me? He said, you know, Brian, the Browns are down by 10 at halftime. So if you're thinking that the biggest problem in the world, that the Browns are down by 10, you're the problem. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Appreciate it.